Good evening and namaskar. Welcome to this weekly briefing in the virtual format. I'll start with two announcements. The first one is an update on the Vande Bharat mission. Under phase 4 of the Vande Bharat mission, which I mentioned to you last time in the weekly briefing, in this phase, a total of 1,197 flights have been scheduled so far. These include 945 international flights and 252 feeder flights. These flights are operated by the Air India Group, by Indigo, SpiceJet and GoAir, and they cover 29 countries. They will be reaching 34 airports in India. Of these flights, 694 flights have already reached India as on 22nd July, and they have repatriated nearly 1 lakh people. This phase is expected to continue until 2nd of August 2020, by which time we expect another 80,000 people to be repatriated. I had announced last week, and this was the press release by the Ministry of Civil Aviation on the establishment of bilateral bubbles with some countries. Now, between 22nd of July and the 31st of August, Air India will be operating 30 flights a week to the US, which it would go to New York, Chicago, Washington, New Jersey and San Francisco. 4 flights a week to Germany, that is to Frankfurt, and 3 flights a week to France, to Paris. So as on 22nd July, under the Vande Bharat mission, a total of 7,88,217 Indian nationals have returned. And this includes 1,03,976 Indians who have returned from Nepal, Bhutan and Bangladesh through land borders. The ministry continues to be in touch with missions on their specific demands for repatriation, and these demands include students who are completing their courses abroad, as well as Indians who have been stranded due to compelling reasons. My other readout is to announce a historic achievement under the India-Bangladesh Maritime and Economic Partnership. For the first time ever, movement of container cargo from Kolkata to Agartala through Chattogram port was successfully concluded today morning. The cargo was received by Chief Minister of Tripura, Shri Biplab Kumar Deb. With this, the distance and time taken in the transportation of goods for India, particularly the northeastern states, will get reduced. It will also enhance business services and revenue generation in Bangladesh. The logistical sector will also get a boost. You would know that this movement was undertaken under the agreement on use of Chattogram and Mongla ports for the movement of India's transit cargo through Bangladesh. The SOPs for this were finalized during the visit of Sheikh Hasina to India in October 2019. This development is in line with the vision that the two countries have towards further strengthening their bilateral connectivity and a mutually beneficial partnership aimed at benefiting people on both sides. So this is by way of the two announcements. Now we'll move on to your questions. Yatin, could you take over, please?
So Rekha Dikshit from The Week has asked, when does work on Chabahar Phase 2 or second terminal begin? Any update, please?
Rekha ji, in my briefing last week, I had responded to various questions at that point of time on the Chabahar-Zahedan railway line, and I had provided an update on the status of cooperation under this project. Now, by way of update, you would have seen a tweet on the 20th of July by our embassy in Iran. Our ambassador was invited by the Deputy Minister and Head of Iranian Railways, Saeed Rasooli, for a meeting to review the cooperation under this project, and they had a good meeting. The ongoing cooperation was reviewed during that meeting, and I would like to particularly draw your attention to the statement by the Deputy Minister and Head of Iranian Railways, who said that vested interests were behind reports that Iran has excluded India in this project. So I don't think I need to clarify further on this matter, but this is by way of update that you wanted.
So Shailendra from News 18 has asked, there are reports that UK parliamentary group which visited Pakistan occupied Kashmir received fund from Pakistan. Your reaction to that?
See, we've seen these reports, and these reports, they raise serious questions about the impartiality and objectivity of this group. In fact, some of you had reported earlier about the visit of this group, and I don't think I would say anything further on this.
So B. Balagopal from Mathrubhumi has asked, it is reported in the media that Faisal Farid, an accused in Kerala gold smuggling, is in the custody of UAE police. Did the government of UAE officially inform India about his custody? If yes, has India started the formal process of extradition of this accused? Has the UAE government shared the investigation findings on the Kerala gold smuggling case with India? Manoj Menon from Mathrubhumi has asked, we have come to know that UAE is also investigating on this case. Please share the details. Do we have any official confirmation about the arrest of Faisal Farid by UAE police? Is there any inquiry by MEA on the functioning of the UAE consulate in Trivandrum?
See, in response to your questions on this Kerala gold smuggling case, you would know that the matter is under investigation by the NIA. So therefore, I would not provide specific responses or comments on this issue. What I'll say is that the UAE authorities are extending all necessary cooperation to us in the investigations.
Siddhant from Vion has asked, how India is facilitating Hindus and Sikhs from Afghanistan come back to India? Any plans to give them citizenship?
See, Siddhant, I think your question is in the context of the recent kidnapping of Sri Nidhan Singh, and you would have seen our statement earlier this week. There has been a recent spurt of attacks on the Hindu and Sikh community in Afghanistan, and these attacks are at the behest of their has been done by terrorists at the behest of their external supporters. We have been receiving requests from the members of these communities. They want to move to India, they want to settle down here, and despite the ongoing COVID situation, we are facilitating this request. Our embassy in Kabul is providing them necessary visas to come here, and once they reach here, their request will be examined and will be acted upon based on extant rules and policies.
So Siddhant from Vion has also asked, Buddha statue was vandalized in Pakistan. Any reaction to that?
I think you are referring to this incident of 18th July in the Mardan district of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, where during the excavation of one of the houses there, a Gandhara style Buddha statue was found. And what we understand is 4 Pakistani citizens, at the behest of a religious cleric who told them that their faith will be renounced if they don't dismantle that statue, they broke that statue with a sledgehammer. Now this has been widely condemned. The monks in Gaya city have condemned this vandalization. There's also been widespread concern expressed by a cross section of people in our country, and we have expressed our concerns to Pakistan. We have conveyed our expectation that they would ensure the safety, security and well-being of the minority community there, as well as protect their cultural heritage.
So Saurav from News Mobile has asked, there have been security concerns raised on business in India directly owned by Chinese government and the PLA. What is the Indian government doing to check their activities?
Well, I'm not aware of the basis of the reports on which this question has been asked. But what I can say is that India offers one of the most open regimes for FDI anywhere in the world. And from time to time, government issues regulations related to FDI, keeping the overall objective of national interests in mind.
Shubh Jyoti from BBC has asked, Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan has apparently raised the issue of Kashmir in his telephonic conversation with Bangladesh Prime Minister yesterday. What is India's stand over this issue? Kallol from The Hindu had also asked this question.
See, our relations with Bangladesh are time-tested and historic. You would know that this year is the celebration of Mujib Barsho, and both countries are taking a lot of steps to strengthen this partnership in this year. We have also stood with Bangladesh as our ties have been forged by history, by our common sacrifices. As regards J&K, we appreciate their consistent stand that Jammu and Kashmir and all developments in Jammu and Kashmir are matters internal to India, and that this is a stand that they have always taken.
So Venkat Narayan has asked, there are reports that 3 Chinese journalists have been expelled. Who are they? Why were they expelled? Kindly clarify. Anita Joshua from Telegraph has asked, have 3 Chinese journalists based in India been asked to leave?
I have no information on this.
नीरज फ्रॉम न्यूज 18 हैज आस्क्ड, वीबीएम का चौथा चरण आज खत्म होने वाला है, क्या 5वां चरण शुरू हो गया या चौथे को एक्सटेंड किया गया है?
नीरज जी, जो चौथा चरण है, जैसे कि मैंने बताया, वो 2 अगस्त को खत्म होगा और 5वें चरण के बारे में जब भी फैसला होगा उचित समय पे हम लोग आपको इसकी सूचना दे देंगे.
हुमा फ्रॉम द फाइनेंशियल एक्सप्रेस हैज आस्क्ड, व्हाट इज द सिचुएशन ऑफ रिपैट्रिएशन of medical students from Kyrgyzstan?
See, as regards repatriation from Kyrgyzstan, we are scheduling additional flights. In fact, a number of such flights have been scheduled, and we are hopeful that with this additional flights, we will be able to repatriate more and more of our students from there.
Manish Jha from Business World has asked, another killing of an Indian citizen by Nepali police in Bihar. Any demarches issued to Nepal by MEA?
See, on the Nepal firing incident, I think you are referring to the incident of 18th of July, and in this one Indian national was injured, and what I can say is that we have extensive and continuing cooperation on border security related matters with Nepal, and in fact there is positive coordination between relevant departments on both sides. We have established SOPs and mechanisms, and under these established SOPs and mechanisms, we have taken up this issue with Nepal.
Narendra Nath Mishra from Now Bharat Times has asked, क्या इंडिया को G7 समिट में शामिल होने के लिए फॉर्मल इनविटेशन यूएसए की ओर से मिला है?
नरेंद्र जी, 2 जून को जो बातचीत हुई थी प्रेसिडेंट ट्रंप और हमारे प्रधानमंत्री के बीच में, तो उस दौरान एक न्योता दिया गया था कि G7 समिट में भारत भाग ले, और प्रधानमंत्री जी ने प्रेसिडेंट ट्रंप को बताया था कि हम इसमें खुशी से भाग लेंगे और हम इस समिट की सफलता के लिए उनके साथ काम करेंगे. उसके बाद हमारी ये समझ है कि यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स जो है मेज़बान के तौर पे, होस्ट के तौर पे, जो भी इससे रिलेटेड इश्यूज हैं उस पर काम करेगा.
Rekha Dixit from The Week has asked, how much aid has India extended to its neighbors over past 5 years?
Rekha ji, I don't have these figures with me now, but what I can tell you is that you can obtain these figures. They are readily available on the MEA Performance Dashboard. Now, this MEA Performance Dashboard is on the MEA website. There's a link there, and I would ask you to go there and have a look.
Suhasini from The Hindu has asked, US Secretary of State Pompeo has called for India and US to work together to counter the challenge from China. What is your response?
See, Suhasini, I have already conveyed that we are engaged on the issue of peace and tranquility on our borders with China. We are talking to them through established diplomatic and military channels. Now, since India and China are both permanent countries, there is this issue has attracted interest all over the world. What I can say is that as part of our diplomacy, we are engaged with those interested to convey our viewpoint. In fact, I would like to go back to the question on Kyrgyzstan. I have some specific figures which I would like to share. I think Huma had asked that question. See, on Kyrgyzstan, I mentioned to you that we are arranging additional flights. In fact, a significant number of flights have been arranged. This month itself, from 3rd to 30th July, 25 flights have been arranged from Bishkek to 13 destinations in India. And when the current phase of Vande Bharat culminates, we would have 88 flights which would have brought back nearly 13,600 Indian nationals, and this includes students. And in fact, I would also like to mention to you that there was a certain restriction because of the COVID situation in Kyrgyzstan for chartered flights, and it was due to the intervention of our ambassador that we could obtain an exemption and get chartered flights to operate from here.
So Pushkar from New Indian Express has asked, will the MEA react to the Pak government filing a plea in the Islamabad High Court seeking the appointment of a lawyer for Kulbhushan Jadhav? Athar from Times Now has asked, what can be shared on Jadhav, especially after Pakistan has unilaterally moved to the Islamabad High Court stating his inability to choose or to appoint a lawyer to represent him. They haven't taken along main stakeholders, namely Indian government and Jadhav himself. Shrinjoy from Times Now has asked, the government has spoken about protecting Kulbhushan Jadhav. What steps are being taken by the government in view of the current and unilateral decisions by Pakistan?
In fact, to respond to these questions, I think I need to go into some background on this. Now, you would know that we have so far requested in the past 1 year, 12 times, we have requested for consular access to Shri Kulbhushan Jadhav. And Pakistan has not been able to provide unimpeded, unhindered and unconditional access. You would have also seen my press statement of 16th of July where we described how the consular access, the so-called consular access which was provided by Pakistan, and that meeting that our consular officials had with Sri Jadhav on that day was scuttled. Our consular officials were not allowed to hand over documents to him. They were not allowed to obtain a power of attorney from Sri Jadhav. Thereafter, and in fact, similarly on the other front, in terms of seeking relevant documents in order to file his review petition, we had been advised by Pakistan that they would be handed over to an authorized Pakistani lawyer. Now, these documents were in terms of the FIRs, the charge sheet, the orders, judgments of the Pakistani court, including the Field General Court Martial. So we had been advised that this would be handed over to an authorized Pakistani lawyer. Now, India appointed a lawyer and we wanted to obtain the relevant documents, but to our surprise, when the authorized lawyer went to the concerned authorities, his request was declined. Now, in the absence of both meaningful consular access as well as relevant documents, as a last resort, we tried to file his review petition in court on the 18th of July. However, our Pakistani lawyer was informed that a review petition could not be filed in the absence of a power of attorney and the supporting documents. So, what has happened is that Pakistan has also created confusion in terms of the last date of filing. They earlier told us that it would be the 19th of July. Thereafter, they said that it is the 20th of July. There have also been considerable inadequacies and shortcomings in the ordinance which has been promulgated by them. It in no way does it fulfill or does it give complete weight to the judgment of the ICJ. There has also been a considerable delay in informing India. They took about 2 weeks to inform us about this ordinance, and only when we asked did they provide us a copy of the ordinance. So what appears is that Pakistan's actions with regard to the ordinance, the whole exercise of not providing documents as requested by us, of not providing unhindered, unimpeded and unconditional consular access, as well as some of the reported unilateral action of recently approaching the High Court, all of it again exposes the complete farcical nature of Pakistan's approach. Pakistan has blocked all avenues for an effective remedy available to India. Now, Pakistan stands not only in violation of the judgment of the ICJ, but its own ordinance. And in this light, India reserves its position in the matter, including its right to avail of further remedies. So this is in terms of, this is a rather long response to your questions. But I think this background was important, and this clearly is what our present position is.
Sir, on China, Pushkar from the New Indian Express has asked, there have been reports of the disengagement process along the LAC slowing down. Is this a sign of China not adhering to the agreements reached during the Corps Commander level and SR level talks? Maha from CNN News 18 has asked, in the next WMCC meeting, will India raise the issue of the stalled disengagement at Pangong Lake specifically? What will India's message to China be as hiccups in disengagement have cropped up again? Ranjit Kumar from Rakshak News has asked, what is the status of the process of disengagement and de-escalation along the LAC in eastern Ladakh that was agreed during previous WMCC meetings? Arthur from Times Now has asked, certain media reports suggest that despite promising to pull back in Pangong Finger area as well as other places, Chinese troops pullout hasn't happened as we were expecting. Could you comment also, how do reports of just a cosmetic pullback sit in with the WMCC happening tomorrow? Will this be raised? Similar kind of questions have been asked by Shrinjoy from Times Now, Shankar Kumar from India vs Disinformation, Siddhant from WION, Neeraj Kumar from News 18, Sridhar from Asian Age, Anish from UNI, Abhishek from Republic, Resolve from Hindustan Times and Sachin from Univarta.
See, to respond to all these questions, first of all, I will say we have made up our position clear as regards the situation along the line of actual control along the India-China border areas through a number of statements in the last several weeks. As conveyed earlier, respecting and strictly abiding by the LAC is the basis of peace and tranquility in the border areas. Several agreements concluded by India and China since 1993 firmly acknowledge this. In my statement of June 26th, I had noted that the conduct of Chinese forces this year, including the deployment of large body of troops and changes in behavior accompanied by unjustified and untenable claims, has been in complete disregard of all mutual agreements. We have also made it clear that India is fully committed to observing and respecting the LAC and that we will not accept any unilateral attempts to change the status quo along the LAC. The two sides have agreed during the conversation of the special representatives to work towards complete disengagement of the troops along the LAC and de-escalation from India-China border areas for full restoration of peace and tranquility. Both sides are engaged in discussions through the established diplomatic and military channels to achieve this objective expeditiously. I had informed last week that the fourth round of the meeting of the senior commanders was held on 14 July, where they also discussed further steps to ensure complete disengagement. In this context, another meeting of the WMCC, that is the Working Mechanism for Consultation and Coordination in India-China border areas, is also expected to be scheduled soon. As we have stated earlier, the maintenance of peace and tranquility in the border areas is the basis of our bilateral relationship. Therefore, it is our expectation that the Chinese side will sincerely work with us for complete disengagement and de-escalation and for full restoration of peace and tranquility in the border areas at the earliest as agreed to by the special representatives. So this is a readout by way of response to those questions. Are there any further questions, Yatin?
No, sir.
Thank you. So this concludes the weekly briefing.